Welcome to Warrior Chat, where today we'll talk about development of the school district budget. I'm Chief Financial and Operations Officer Susan Green, and I'm here today with our business manager, Trevor Carrington. Hi, Trevor.
Hello.
So we're going to talk about how we put the budget together for the district each year. So we're going to start talking first about those things that we have some control over and those things that we don't have quite as much control over. So can you tell me about that, Trevor?
Yep, so each year when we put together the budget, we think about what items we do have control over. So for example, that would be contracted things like salaries and the benefits that come with it. Then there's other things that we don't really have control over. For example, the PSERS rate, which the state sets every year.
Okay, so PSERS rate, talk a little bit about that. So what's PSERS?
So PSERS is the retirement system that we're all part of, and part of that is it's our pension system. Mm-hmm. So the state, the district pays a share to the state, and then employees also pay a share. Every year, the state sets a certain rate that the district must contribute, and this year it actually wasn't as high of an increase as it's been in years past.
But still a significant increase for this year. So,
yes.
So I think we want to talk a little bit about, for the public, about what the retirement system is and kind of, you know, who's part of it. So for school district employees, they must be part of the retirement system, so there's not an option. And the school district must be part of the system and must pay that rate. So
correct.
It really is mandated for both employees and for the district to participate in PSERS.
Yes.
So what other things do we have less control over?
So there are other things that we don't have control over. So for example, it would be utility costs. We have to pay the bills to keep the lights on, to have energy costs and all of that. And we don't really have much control over what those rates are.
So just like at home, we've got to pay our electric bill, we've got to pay our gas bill, our water bill, but we do have a lot of processes in place to be as efficient as possible.
That's correct.
We have setbacks for our electricity, for our heat, for our air conditioning, so for all those things. So we try to be as efficient as possible, but again, those are required things, just like at home, that you have to pay. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what makes up the school district budget. So what's the majority of the school district budget?
So we are a service business, if you think about it that way. So about 71% of our budget is comprised of salaries and benefits for our employees, because really what we do is serve our students.
Okay, so majority of our employees are our teaching staff out in the classrooms with our students, helping our students, educating our students. So again, that's really what, when we're putting the budget together, the majority of it is we're looking at those employees and their salaries and benefits, and then we kind of fill everything else in after that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how the school district does. So how do we fare as far as instructional cost per student compared to our peers?
Our instructional cost per student is actually one of the lower in our York County peers. So we are about the 4th lowest per instructional student cost.
And then how do we fare as far as SATs? So SATs are one of those tests where they look at how our students are doing, you know, how they've progressed from kindergarten to 12th grade, and an overall snapshot of, you know, how they were educated. So how do we do with SAT scores?
So not only do we exceed the nationwide and the Pennsylvania average for SAT scores, we actually exceed the York County average as well.
Great. So Susquehannock, our Susky students do a really good job on those SAT scores, so we're really proud of that. So we're able to put together or have an education that is on the low end for instructional cost per student, but we have a great return on our investment as far as our test scores. Our students are doing very well.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about the process, when it starts and what happens with that?
So we start the process in either October and November. So every November the administrators bring forward a request list of things that they need for the budget. And those are not just any wants. It's very detailed about what they actually need for the budget. This year we had about $900,000 of requests, and unfortunately not all of them could ever be funded.
So when we met with the board in November, you know, they kind of give our marching orders on how to put together the budget. So when we met with them, we had $300,000 of additional items in the budget from the prior year. So restorations, not new items. And so we had to pare that $900,000 down from $900,000 to $300,000. So we worked together as an administrative team from all principals, elementary, middle school, high school, and our operations folks to kind of look at, what were those priorities district-wide that rose to the top. So let's talk about what was added in. So we restored some staff, restored some items. We had that retirement or PSERS increase that we had to put in there. We had other purchase services, about $700,000 for tuition placements, student transportation, charter funding. But again, as we look at charter funding, I think it's important to talk a little bit about that. And then the other thing that we put into the budget this year is a tenth of a mil for debt service, about $160,000, to start preparing for those renovation projects. So like at home, we don't want to wait until we need to do a major renovation project to start saving for it. So our idea is to phase that millage in over time. So as we start to look at starting with Shrewsbury, which is now 20 years old, which no one can believe when you talk about it. So as we start looking at Shrewsbury as our first renovation project, we'll start to build in that millage. But then what other things have we added back in for this year?
So we restored some professional staff. One of the staff positions that was restored was a secondary science teacher. So currently we had a split position between the high school and middle school, and this added the position back, so it was one person for each building. Other items that we needed were an enrollment position, just we're seeing growth. So we added a position in for elementary purposes. And then we if there's any additional enrollment, that would come from contingency. So if we do see a need for additional staff, it would be a contingency item. And it's worth comparing that in 2009 and 10, we had 248 professional staff compared to 225 now. And with about relatively stable enrollment, we're doing a lot more with less.
So we're down about 23 teachers from where we were in 2009-10. Trying to be creative with, or being very creative with trying to make things work through the recession, and we're very happy to be able to restore some of those positions now. Kind of talk about that split position. Very difficult to find folks that are certified in all those areas, and making that work. So we added that secondary science teacher like you talked about, and then at the elementary level we are seeing that increased enrollment, so adding that position back. So then what other staffer items are we looking at?
We did add a paraprofessional staff person for special education. We are adding some summer maintenance and custodial help, which in the past we actually had a lot of that over the summer, and now we're restoring just about a quarter of it.
Okay. So right now, in the 17-18 budget, so the current budget, we did not have any summer help for maintenance and custodial. So when that grass is growing, those weeds are growing, when all those summer projects need to be done, didn't have any extra help. The paraprofessional you talked about, so one of the things with that, I believe we're bringing back a program of students, so we need to add that in order to make that program work. And then we're also looking at additional supplementary
courses online. So it's an alternative for charter schools that they could attend.
So in Pennsylvania, students are allowed to attend charter schools, and whether that's a bricks and mortar, so like a school building charter school, or cyber education. So there's many cyber charter schools, and folks would be hearing that on the radio. There's a lot of ads on there. And that is a Pennsylvania public school, and our public, or our parents, can choose to send their children to any of those approved cyber charter schools, and we must pay the tuition. So for students for regular education that want to attend at home on a cyber charter school, it's about $12,000 we have to pay out. And for special education, it's about $30,000, or actually $27,000. So one of the things that we want to make sure is we're providing those options for our families internally. So we have our own Southern York County Digital Academy that you talked about briefly, and students can get a Susquehannock diploma. We do believe our option is better for our students. It's a better education, and we're very proud that we have about 54 students in our own Digital Academy. The money's staying here. We're educating our students as we should be, and we only have 41 students going out, so that money that's leaving the district. So we are very proud of that. We put that in, I think, about 9 years ago. Have never added staff. We've kind of just pulled different staff members, but since we've hit over 50 at 54 this year, we do believe we want to add, or need to add, it's a big need for next year, that additional staff member. so an instructional technology person for to help with the digital academy. So other proposed things from our priority list that we'll be adding back, security preventive maintenance. So we have our buzz-in systems, our security cameras that we've been putting in over the last couple years. So we need a maintenance contract for those. We have reading and ESL curricular items. We have some high school library furniture that we kind of joke was here before you were probably born. Yeah. So 1970s furniture there that we want to or need to replace, and then some special education assistive technology. So a couple other things, an elementary bus. Right now we have a bus run that only does secondary students, so 7 through 12. So we, because of that additional enrollment at the elementary, we need to add that elementary bus run back in. Our Chromebooks are in their 4th year, so when we purchased that lease for them, the first 3 were covered under warranty, and this is the 4th year warranty. So we also are adding a school resource officer, which is a commissioned police officer for the district, and it will be contracted with Southern Regional Police. And then the last item there is our Safe Schools Alert, which is the See Something, Say Something. It's an ability for community members, parents, students, teachers to send a tip if they know about something, because as we're looking at school security and safety, one of the things that you read in all the expert reports is that a lot of times people knew about it. So we want to know if there's any concerns out there so we can head those off. So we have those $600,000 of unfunded things. Can you talk a little bit about what types of things they were, and then how we're addressing some of those needs?
So some of those requests were professional staff. So as we mentioned in the beginning, we are a service industry. Most of our expenses relate to staff, so there's always the need for additional staff. Other items were maintenance tractor. So we have maintenance equipment, we have a lot of grounds to cover. There's always going to be the need that we will end up replacing that. Some of the other things were equipment and supplies for our various programs, and then data projectors. So what we did is took a look at what were priorities of those items, and then what might we be able to purchase with money in this year's budget.
So when we look at those things, the important thing to note, though, we can only look at things that aren't reoccurring.
Right.
Because if you purchase things that are reoccurring out of one-time funds, like for instance putting back a professional staff member, then next year rolls around, we wouldn't have enough money for that. So you got to be really careful as we look at that they're one-time items. So what are some of those one-time items that we looked at?
Some of the one-time items this year were a new K-6 math program. So in the past, the high school and middle school, they received something along the lines of Chromebooks. This is a new initiative for the elementary for their new math program. So that was one of the items. Other items were cafeteria tables at the middle school, along with repairs to a wall in the Southern Elementary. Other items were a U.S. textbook for AP History, choir robes for the high school, and then applied arts equipment for the high school as well.
Yeah, so I think it's important to note as we talk about these things like cafeteria tables or choir robes, all of these things were on long-term lists that we weren't able to fund. So it wasn't like all of a sudden we decided we needed cafeteria tables. These are the old style table that aren't quite as safe, that take multiple staff members to move around. So we have some of those left and wanted to, they've been on that unfunded list. So we're looking to replace those. The high school choir robes are greater than 20 years old. Yeah. So, none of these fall under the idea of a wish list. More of it is a dire need that we replace some of these things. So overall, we're doing very well in the district. So 17-18 was a positive year. So we always look at fund balance when we're looking at how we're doing. So fund balance is our reserve. We do have a board policy that we must maintain a minimum of 5%. And then the state has a law that you must stay within 8%. So we always look at kind of where we are, making sure that we have enough reserves for cash flow, because we have those years when the state decides not to pass the budget and pay us, and then also making sure we can maintain our facilities. So those are always important things to look at. So we'll have this chart put up on the Warrior Chat, but it's showing where we are in fund balance in relation to other districts. Can you kind of explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so this chart just really shows where we're at with respect to other districts within our intermediate unit within York County. So as you can see, we are the third lowest with our fund balance. We're very well below 10%, but above that 5% limit that our board policy states. And what this shows is that we are doing a very good job maintaining an adequate fund balance while not raising taxes past any amounts that we need, and really keeping our fund balance at a good amount. And the line that you can see, it's a trend line that shows the total expenditures as a percent of your fund balance. So a lot of districts are right around that, their percent of expenditures touching the top of their fund balance.
So we also like to look at where we are. We talked about the upcoming renovation projects, so where we are district-wide with capital projects. So we have a 10-year capital plan. We did have a 5-year capital plan. We kind of changed that into a 10-year because of looking at the next set of renovation projects for the 4 buildings. So we did do a transfer. The district did a transfer for the summer 2018 projects, about $750,000, very similar to what we do each year. And those projects include roofing, paving, those types of projects. We also need to look to the summer 2019. Those projects will come out of surplus or fund balance when we get there. We do have that 10-year capital plan in our budget books that we put on the website. So if anyone's interested in more details on what that looks like, that is on our website for people to look at, as well as the entire budget in detail.
Right.
So in balancing the budget, can you talk about what are the sources that we use in order to balance the budget, kind of where we are revenues and expenses and how we balance things?
So our revenues, they're really our local, state, and federal revenues. The majority of our revenues come from local sources, then about 1/3 making up the rest, most of which are the state. So our revenues, we have about $55 million of revenues, and expenditures are about $57 million. So that leaves a deficit that we need to figure out how to fix of about $2 million. We'll be projecting to use $1.5 million of fund balance, and then the remaining amount would be a tax increase for next year.
Okay, so that $1.5 million from fund balance. So as we talked about that, again, the idea is we would never want to spend 100% of our budget. First of all, in Pennsylvania, you can't go over budget; it's illegal. And second of all, you never know how much it's going to snow, how many students are going to move in, what special needs students are going to have, what's going to break, just like at home. So we need to plan for that. Using fund balance in a responsible way is one of the ways we do that, so that $1.5 million. And then looking at a tax increase, there is something called a PDE index, so we can't go above that index. But a lot of districts, what their plan is, they go right to the index each year. That is not what we do in Southern. What we do in Southern is we look at what tax increase we need in order to maintain our educational program. So we kind of look at what rose to the very top of those priority lists and what can we live without for another year.
Right.
And we also want to look at when we're restoring staff, we want to do it in a way that we make sure we can maintain it, because what we don't want to do is restore things back and then have to cut them the next year. So we're looking at a proposed 2.48% tax increase for next year, and that is below the 2.9 that the state sets as our index. So when we look at that, it's still, Southern is actually one of the lower taxing districts in York County. Right. Even with that tax increase next year, we will maintain that position probably at the lowest. Central right now, if they had no tax increase, would be similar, but we are hearing that they probably will. Right. Of course, that's not set, and our tax rate will not be set until the May board meeting.
Correct.
So kind of looking about what happens next, in April, the board approved a proposed final budget, and then in Pennsylvania, you actually have to then approve a final budget. So that will be done at the May board meeting, so the May 24th board meeting, and that's when the tax rate will also be set. So that's kind of walking through what the budget process is. Is there anything else you want to add for our public?
No, I think we took care of it.
Okay, great. So we want to hear from our public. If you have any questions that you'd like to talk about the budget or anything else with finances or operations in the district, please don't hesitate to give myself, Susan Green, a call, or Trevor Carrington. We're in the district administration office, so the number there is 717-235-4811. And also please look at our website. We have additional documents out there for more information for the public. And thank you so much for tuning in today for Warrior Chat. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.